welcome to Kigali, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming us here.
Full house here. I want to begin with, we're all here at the Africa CEO Forum. We've had 2 days of great conversation. So the most important thing for both of you, starting with you, Mr. Pouyanné, TotalEnergies is in more than 30 countries across the continent, upstream and downstream. What are you excited about in Africa right now?
I know Africa for us is a part of our history. We are celebrating our 100-year anniversary. We have not been there for 100 years, but it's really one of the strong anchors of the company. And we're excited because first, the continent has a growing population, growing market, which is good. And of course, it's a continent full of natural resources, not only traditionally oil and gas, but it's also for us, as we have moved from Total to TotalEnergies, a very good earth to deploy our multi-energy strategy, which is also investing in renewables. And by the way, it's making somewhere circling the loop, because historically we were producing oil and gas to export the energy. Now, because of electricity, because we are in fact an electricity producer, we produce electricity and we deploy also some LPG investments in the continent for the population in the continent. So this multi-energy strategy for me is reconciling the oil and gas resource for export, but giving revenues, but also for the people of the continent. And I remind you that TotalEnergies is the only big major company which has kept all its retail network. We have 4,800 stations in 45 countries. So for us, it's part of, I would say, Africa is part of the family of TotalEnergies.
All right, and Al-Haji, you have operations across more than a dozen countries. What are you most excited about in the continent right now?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to the Africa CEO conference this year. And I must thank His Excellency for inviting me personally, to be here, and that's why I'm here. Well, I'm very, very excited because the growth going forward, the future is Africa. We have whatever it takes to make Africa great, and I think that is why I'm not only putting in my own, money, I'm putting my soul and life in Africa to make Africa great. Like what I keep saying, nothing is impossible in Africa. Africa is like a scratch card. Unless you scratch it, you know what number it is, or you won't be able to use it. So that is why, for some of us, despite the boom of the capital market of the US, Google, Microsoft, and the rest, we didn't really participate. We took all our money and invested. In the last 7 years, we have invested more than $25 billion in terms of making Africa self-sufficient in fertilizer, in petrochemicals, in refined products, and also continue with the expansion of our cement business. So what we have right now, we also say, okay, fine, is it possible for an African company to grow this big? And we had this dream just about 5 years ago, and we say, okay, we want to move from 5 billion revenue to 30 billion revenue. Is it possible? And we made it happen. It's possible now, we've done it, and we have actually finished our own refinery. Our refinery is quite big. It is something that we believe Africa needs, because we now looked at it and said, okay, fine. In Africa, do we really refine the oil we consume? Do we really refine the oil we produce? The answer is no. And you look for the entire continent, there are only 2 countries that don't import petroleum product, which is a tragedy. I mean, only Morocco, not only Algeria and Libya, but the rest are all importers. So we need to really change by making sure that, yes, we just don't go and produce raw material, we should produce finished products and create jobs. One of the things that we need to know as also Africans is that, yes, we produce raw materials, we export them. When you export raw materials and somebody now keep importing things into your continent and be dumping goods, what you are importing poverty and exporting jobs out. So we have to change the narrative.
You've spent, thank you. You mentioned investing $25 billion in the last few years. 20 billion of that went into just this refinery, which is the largest on the continent. It opened a year ago. What is the impact so far of that having come on stream?
There is quite of impact. We just commissioned in February. We've started now. We're producing jet fuel. We're producing gasoline. Diesel. By next month, we'll be producing gasoline. But what that will do is that it will be able to take most of the African crudes that are being produced and also be able to supply not only Nigeria. Nigeria, our capacity is too big for Nigeria, but it will be able to supply in West Africa, Central Africa, and also South Africa. We have 650,000 metric tons of, 650,000 barrels per day. We have 1 million tons of polypropylene. We have 590,000 carbon black, raw materials for, making ink, dyes, and co. And then we are expanding more. This is the first phase. We're actually going now to the next phase, which will start early next year.
All right. And an investment like this, Mr. Pouyanné, is also significant for your business across the continent, because often we don't value add the crude we produce here. We have to then re-import it. The fuel we buy from your stations across the continent doesn't come from here.
Yeah. No, but thanks to this event, and thank you to Mr. Kagame who invited me, we made this morning the first deal between both of us. So
you made the first deal with the Dangote Refinery.
I can tell you. We met here, and because of the refinery, we said together, okay, look, we are a big crude producer in Nigeria, but also in other countries, and we are also a big off-taker of products for the continent, so we should find a way to work a deal. So the two CEOs met with our head of trading, and we find a way to convince them to make a deal. So I think it's giving, it's a stone, an important stone to develop a business. When you have this type of mammoth investments, you create certainly an activity like what we are doing. What we will do what we are doing in Uganda by producing this oil onshore Uganda. I know it's a lot of debate, but I can tell you it will be a source of developing industries around this production of oil, like what we will do in Mozambique. When we will develop this project in Mozambique, it will be also a source, not only for exporting energy, but by the way, we plan to take domestic gas to Maputo to produce electricity. So all that, this is the way we should think to that. It's not only to export for us, but to add value in the continent, and then you will deploy more activity, not only during the project times, but also, I would say, on a permanent basis. That I think so. I could only admire. I think many people, honestly, I was part of them, adapt that this refinery would never be into production. It is a case. So congratulations to Aliko. I think it's you need leaders with a vision, and I think Aliko has a vision. So I'm happy to have met him today and to engage into a new business relationships.
There are two things, Mr. Pouyanné, you mentioned that I want to follow up on. One, you also met today with President Kagame and President Nyusi of Mozambique. I wonder if there's any news you have to share about your LNG project in Mozambique, which has been under force majeure since 2021, April.
We are working on it. And thank you to Jeune, and thank you to Jeune Afrique to have allow me to have a super useful day. First Aliko, then President Nyusi, then President Dangote. I will come back to this type of event, with the number of business I have in Africa. No, honestly, we are all working hard. I can tell you, contractors aligned, everybody is working hard. It's a project of a huge size. So, unfortunately, we were obliged to stop it, but we intend, clearly, my objective is to resume it. it. And I'm working hard. I can tell you it's on the top of my agenda to resume it, and we'll do it in the best possible conditions for everybody, of course, but security first, but it's a matter of really that's high on our agenda.
You also mentioned the East African crude oil pipeline, which will run from Uganda's Lake Albert region all the way to the port of Tanga in Tanzania. There's been a lot of pushback on that from environmental groups, from some local communities. In fact, one campaign has called it that it will devastate communities, it will endanger wildlife, and it will cook the planet. And they call it economically irresponsible. What's your response to that?
Yeah, but you know, you are back to many arguments. First, fundamentally, and you mix different ideas. Do we need oil and gas today in the planet? I've made a long demonstration recently at the French Parliament. Just to tell you, today, the reality of our energy, today, the system is that it works with 80% of fossil fuels. 30% of oil, 20% of gas, 30% of coal. When I entered into this industry 25 years ago, it was 82%. You tell me nothing has moved. No, a lot of things have moved, but in the meantime, the population of the world has grown by 30%. So to think that we can just change from in a night this system of the world, it will not happen. So of course we have to invest heavily in what I call the system B, which is a low carbon system, to invest heavily in renewables, in biofuels, all these new energies. But you know, in 23, all the investments we have done on a worldwide basis, almost more than 500 gigawatts of renewable, which is huge, only absorb 40% of the additional increase of demand in the year. And there is a phenomenon, which is that if you don't invest in the oil fields, in new oil fields, every year, the production of oil, existing oil fields declined by 4% per year. Natural decline. So if we don't invest in new oil fields, I will tell you what will happen. Today you complain about the oil price, you will not complain. You will shout, you will cry, you will accuse us to have organized a scarcity. So that's just a natural, that's the reality. The demand continues to grow. Of course, it does not mean that we should not do it, but today it's an and equation. We must continue to invest in oil and gas, and we must double, triple the efforts in this renewable system. But as long as you did not build a full system, you know, you cannot starve people for energy. I say that in Africa, which is difficult because today you have quite a number of Africans who do not have access to energy. But I can tell you, if you notice in 22 and 23, the reaction in Europe, when they were afraid to not have enough energy for their winter because of Russian gas, nobody could accept that. So I think the reality is this one. So this oil of Angola, of Uganda, sorry, it's useful. When you ask other questions, are we such a terrible company? We don't respect human rights. I can tell you, it's absolutely the contrary of all values of the company. And I have some figures. Of course, it's an exceptional project because we have decided to build a 1,400 kilometer pipeline, which is buried. Not on the ground. And I can tell you this pipeline does not go through natural preserved areas, special areas. Yes, there were 19,000 families which were impacted. 800 of them we must have built a house. 98% of these people are today in their new house. And I can tell you 97% are very happy. Then, of course, we had a huge work to be done to, I would say, reimburse the other families which we bought some land. 99% of them have been paid, and we have very little, we have 30 cases out of 19,000, which today are still in the courts, which honestly, so we have done the best possible. It's a huge project, but it's happened, by the way, let's be clear. We are drilling. We are building, and so by end 25, beginning 26, this will be a reality. And I think, honestly, in this debate, most of the critics were coming from Western NGOs. When we are in a company, we consider that our duty is to work for the country, for Uganda. I'm not there to give lessons to Uganda. I'm there Uganda has given us has trusted us to develop their resource.
Right.
We must do it in the best possible way. And, you know, we are a 100-year company, deeply rooted in Africa, and I can accept a lot of things, but criticizing us that we don't respect human rights is completely wrong. So that's the reality. Our world is more complex today than before. I don't tell you that we were perfect. It's, again, a lot of people were impacted, it's true.
Right.
And we are more accustomed to develop offshore production. But this project, again, will be a real source of wealth for Uganda, for Tanzania, and for the East Africa in a whole.
All right. I want to talk about cement in a moment, but I just want to go back to the refinery. And speaking of opposition, how much pushback, how much opposition did you face in building a refinery this big from scratch?
Well, I don't know where to start from, but the pushback was very, very heavy, was very, very impactful, because there are people who have actually been used to just making money trading without refining. And, you know, to get people who are committed to Africa, like Patrick Pouyanné, like, you know, he's here, not because he's here. If it's not true, I wouldn't say it, but somebody like Patrick believes in investing in Africa. Because a lot of the companies that are today are operating, they're actually not investing. And some of the, issues of stopping that investment is going to impact us, not today, going forward in the future, which means our oil production will continue to go down. Because in oil, unless you keep investing, your production will go down. So that is the issue. And, you know, people talk about, yes, you know, all these vehicles, EVs. Yes, it's true. Today, the production of vehicles in the world is about 100 million. If you take even 25 million vehicles to produce, you need over 6 million tons of lithium and other copper and other things, which today we're at a capacity of about 1 million. So I don't know when this thing is going to replace the fossil fuel. For some of us, we believe that, okay, fine, even if there will be a reduction. I mean, you can see, of recent, you've seen Hertz rental car. They dropped all their EVs, and they've gone back to gasoline. We should ask them why. What was the reason that they did that? It's not that I don't I believe in it, but it will take time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. But with us, we face the most challenging thing in terms of building this refinery. First of all, we couldn't find what you call an EPC contractor. That is engineering, procurement, and construction. The conditions that they were giving us were no conditions that we could actually take. The pricing that they were giving us wasn't a condition that we could actually even afford. So we, as Dangote, got so upset, and we set up our own internal team to now do the entire project. People will think that, refinery, okay, it's not a common refinery that we built. Our refinery is 650,000 barrels. Every single equipment that we have in the refinery was never, ever designed or built because of the size. Smaller size have been done. Maximum refinery, I think it's about 420,000 barrels. We are the only ones, first in the world, to do 650,000, inclusive of petrochemicals. And we are the EPC contractors. So that's why today, if you go to our yard, you see that we have almost 340 cranes, 40, the equipment that we have, construction equipment that we have, is much more than the entire construction equipment of West Africa. Entire. We have to do that. We have to build a port to be able to receive some of the equipment, because we had some 2 or 3 pieces that are 3,000 tons, one piece. So we had to build special ports to be able to receive those, equipments. Challenging times, we had to, do sand filling of 65 million tons of sand to bring up the level of this. So we face so many issues by running so much of infrastructure, which was zero in Nigeria. We had no infrastructure. So we had to build all this infrastructure to be able to build. And the major burden on us was that, look, there is no room for failure because we were the EPC contractors. 90% of people never ever believed that we'll be able to deliver. But, we've been able to deliver for now.
That's incredible. You talked about the capacity is greater than what Nigeria can take in. You can export to West Africa, the rest of the region. But the first step is, when will Nigeria become fully self-sufficient? Do you think that you don't have to import oil?
Yeah.
Do you have a projection?
Well, right now, Nigeria have no cost to import anything apart from gasoline. By sometime in June, next month, within the next 4 or 5 weeks, Nigeria shouldn't import anything like gasoline, not 1 drop of liter. And when you look at it, I will share a publication of 31st of March, 1975, which was now almost 50 years ago. Nigeria, we were working on removing queues of petroleum, supply. So we've been trying all along, and we've been having issues. But right now, this issue has been addressed not only for Nigeria, for even our neighboring countries. We have enough gasoline to give to at least the entire West Africa. We have enough diesel to give to West Africa, Central Africa. We have enough aviation fuel to give to the entire continent, and also export some to Brazil and Mexico. So what we have actually done is not...
I apologize to interrupt you, sir. I just want to make sure that we can give a big welcome. Please stand and welcome His Excellency, President William Ruto of Kenya. Please sit.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Madam, what we're doing, I think we as an African company, and we're proudly African, is to see what other... It's not only about petroleum products. Today, our polypropylene and our polyethylene will meet the entire demand of Africa today. We're doing, we're doing base oil, which is to do like engine oil. We're doing linear benzene, which is raw material to produce LAB, which is raw material to produce detergent. We have 1.4 billion people population. Nobody is producing that in Africa. So all our detergents are imported, the raw material. We are producing that raw material to make Africa self-sufficient. And as I said, give us 3, maximum 4 years, Africa will not, and I repeat, and you can challenge me, will not import any more fertilizer from anywhere. We'll make Africa self-sufficient in both potash, phosphate. Even if you don't have enough, there is a lot in Morocco. But we're also looking at the opportunities. Our urea, we're at 3 million tons. In the next 20 months, we will be at 6 million tons of urea, which is, I think, the entire capacity of Egypt. We're getting there, and I'm sure we'll make everybody proud.
Fantastic. Mr. Pouyanné, we've got our leaders here from at least 3 African presidents. If you're being entirely honest, what's the most difficult bit about doing business here on the continent? Multiple geographies, multiple regulations, multiple taxes.
Yeah, but in our business, we have to be local. Each country has its policy. I would say for Africa, what are the challenges, if I'm honest? First, security, but we are able to deal with it. So I would say we are accustomed in the Niger Delta to deal with it. So Of course, it requires some specific things because for a CEO like me, of course, security of my people is of primary importance, you know, so I have to, that's almost, but I would say that's the point. Then, of course, then it's finding talents in the continent. You have some countries like Nigeria, like Rwanda, where we can find talents quite easily. Some of us have a difficulty of education. So I would say, and we can contribute to you to that as well by training people. It's part of what we bring. But I think that's the second point on which we need to invest collectively. And then sometimes, you know, you have a sort of, it's life. So you love to debate. You love to open topics without closing them. So you know when in Nigeria, for example, we have been, since I am in the business, there is always a new legislation in Nigeria about a new petroleum law. So when you have a so in France we are custom, but we don't have oil and gas. In Nigeria, you know, when you have a permanent debate, and it's difficult for investors who look for the long term to know where we go. And in fact, it has been bad, to be honest, because reality, unfortunately, I think that Niger Delta is the most prolific part of West Africa. But when you look what happened, because of this debate, there was not a single exploration well in Nigeria for 12 years. Last project we done it was Egina in 2014. So it's time now, sometimes, to good to have debate, but then to settle the debate, and then to put a framework on the table so that the investor can trust. And so I'm working hard, and I visited President Tinubu. I will come back again tomorrow to tell him, okay, look, we fix the gas, no, we need to fix the water. So that's important, to find the signal. There are countries which perfectly have integrate that. Angola, I will go to Angola and announce a very large project, $6 billion, beginning of the week, because there the framework is stable. So we know where we go. Mozambique, stable. Uganda, we had some debates in Uganda, which have been part of the problem. So I think that's important, stability. Then I would say today, when I'm looking to our multi-energy strategy, we want to invest in electricity, which is another electric energy. It's more local. And what we face today, honestly, is a difficulty to secure the payments for electricity. I know it's a topic. The governance of electricity in the continent is less clear than in oil and gas. And I think we need to make an effort. And everybody thinks that renewables is good for Africa because you have sun, you have wind, etc. But in fact, we need to put some right framework. And know when I'm attending the IEA against forum to speak about Africa, I tell them, look, what we need today is not words. We need actions from the World Bank or this institution to put a guarantee scheme in place. We just want to guarantee to secure. I don't think we will use it, but when you invest in electricity, it's a local energy, you need to find a way to secure it. It's of primary importance. So I think we need to put some goodwill together to find the right framework to let this electricity business really growing in Africa, because without it, it's difficult to make industries, it's difficult for people to I would say, to have a better way of life, elevate standard of life. So the continent is plenty of resource, for sure, and we love it. I think it's part, and honestly, even if sometimes it's a little the mess, we love it. Right. Because the French people find a way to navigate, you know, so we are good at that. And I think we find ways to find a deal with Aliko. So since I found a way with Aliko, I can deal with many people in Africa.
Right.
So, you know.
So. Mr. Pouyanné, I appreciate how candid you have been on the panel. Mr. Dangote, jump in.
Yeah, let me jump in. Oh, well, Patrick, I don't know whether this is a compliment or is a...
You will know me. It's always double language.
Okay, well, you know, you're right. But I think, you know, just to add, in Nigeria, I think the current government, they've done quite a lot, like what you said, in electricity tariff. The issue is about payment. And then they have also done quite a lot in terms of the PIA, which is Petroleum Industry Act. Is true, it might not be 100% perfect, but it's a start. And I'm sure the government is always willing to, and that is why we have somebody like you as the head of Total still investing. You are back to investment. Apart from this, the deal that we just closed this morning, you've closed even one last week on gas. Okay, even us, we have closed deals with shell on gas because it makes sense. But I think the biggest challenge that we have as entrepreneurs in Africa is the inconsistencies in policies. One now you say, okay, yes, today we are going to drive left hand, or you say, okay, fine. Goalpost is here, just in front of you. When you are about to score the goal, then the government will remind you, no, the goalpost has been changed to behind you. So, so these are the main issues that are actually, they can bankrupt anybody. So I think we need to really look at it that, look, our own political leaders, what you need to understand is that it's a win-win. It's like what they say, you cannot clap with one hand, you clap with two hands. Now, I was telling somebody was talking about, you people are making too much money in cement, blah, blah, blah. Then later on, I reminded the person that, look, go and check our figures. For every 1 naira that I turn around, government collects 52%. So
on every single naira?
On every single naira we turn around, 52% goes to the government through various taxes. Okay, so it's not a tea party. Everybody, everybody is benefiting. And then there are quite a lot of countries, especially in East Africa, that we have helped. When we went to East Africa 10 years ago or 9 years ago, when we were building our own cement plants, we were paying $230 per ton. Okay, but after our plant, the price dropped to even as low as 65. So there are quite a lot of benefits, not only to the countries, but to also the citizens of those countries. We've created jobs. In the same Patrick is saying, yes, we lack skills. In the refinery we built, we had at a point 67,000 workers, but 35,000 workers from Nigeria have actually been trained, and I can assure you by the time we finish the project, they are better fitters, welders than the people we brought from India and other countries. Well certified.
Right. We are delaying the president. So
just one last word. In fact, I want to tell you that there are also very good examples of governance in Africa. It's here in Rwanda. You have a country which is really, for me, since I discovered it, I came first with my family to visit the country, and it was extraordinary to see how this country, without a lot of natural resource, is able, because of a vision and a clear leader, without moving the target, like you said, you managed to have an incredible development. So I think we can praise President Kagame for that.
Finally, really quickly, we talk a lot about the African Continental Free Trade Area, the ability for goods and services to move across the continent. Mr. Dangote, you have previously complained about the difficulty of traveling on a Nigerian passport across the continent. Has it become easier?
Even an hour ago, I complained to President Kagame.
At least you can come here visa-free.
No, here is the best example, but I told him that, yes, as an investor, as somebody who really wants to make Africa great, I have to now apply 35 different visas on my passport. And I told Mr. President, I said, Mr. President, I really don't have the time to go and be dropping my passports in embassies to get a visa. But you see, the most annoying thing is that, yes, if you are treating everybody the same, then I can understand. I can assure you, Patrick doesn't need 35 visas. No, I said that. What I'm saying, you have...
You do not... You don't need 35 visas on a French passport compared to a Nigerian passport.
35 visas on French passport.
No.
But, so which means you have a freer movement than myself in Africa.
Yeah. But you have, I remember that there are 3 countries, Uganda, Kenya, and Rwanda. You have 1 visa for the free when you are a tourist.
This is true.
I've done it. So it's good. So you can expand it. It's a question of will. But I think all what is moving on about community between Africa, it's up to the African leaders to decide, will be good for Africa.
Yes, but it will change. And what I keep saying, right now, our main job is to make sure the regional markets, they all work. Okay? Once they work, then we can now go to AFCTA. But the AFCTA also, we need to make sure that it works. We cannot have a very, very promising continent, and our intra-trade is less than 16%. Okay, so we Africans will have to do it. If we are waiting for foreigners to come and do it, both the development of Africa, it's not going to happen. So it can only happen by us Africans. We must risk our resources and make sure that we lead. Then we will have people who actually trust and believe in Africa, like Patrick, to come and help us to push to the next level.
Thank you.
Just 1 second. On a point of personal privilege, because I have the microphone, I complained recently about Nigeria requires me to pay $215 for a single entry 1 month visa every time. Biometrics is $170. And I said, as an African, as a Kenyan, this seems unfair. And they told me, actually, Kenya said it would be easier to come to Kenya, but then you introduced an electronic travel authorization, which made it harder to come to Kenya. So I was like, I don't work for government, but President Ruto is here, so he's heard.
Okay. But let me also tell you the good news. On Monday, there was cabinet meeting, and President Tinubu wasn't happy about this same visa issue, and I can assure you in the next couple of weeks, you'll see a massive reform in terms of visas going into Nigeria.
I think on that optimistic note, thank you so much. You have been both so candid. We appreciate your time, Mr. Pouyanné, Mr. Dangote. Thank you for honoring us with your time. A big round of applause. And my only next job is to invite my countrymate, we call her Helen Kioko, Eleni Jokos, my colleague from CNN, to handle the presidential panel.